This Voice of San Diego podcast is sponsored in part by Downtown San Diego Partnership. As a nonprofit news organization, Voice of San Diego depends on our members, foundations, and sponsors like the Downtown San Diego Partnership. We are very grateful for all of our supporters, and we will recognize their support sometimes during our shows. Join the Downtown San Diego Partnership on Thursday, March 1st, to help welcome the 2018 Board of Directors and incoming President and CEO, Betsy Brennan. Don't miss the 4th edition of Kev Talk, an event featuring side-splitting roasts of the finest leaders and citizens San Diego has to offer. Tables and tickets for the 2018 installation dinner, brought to you by California Strategies, are available now at downtownsandiego.org. And if you like Voice of San Diego's work and want to become a sponsor, contact us at development@voiceofsandiego.org.
Welcome to the Voice of San Diego podcast, where we make sense of local politics, schools, housing, public safety, the civic issues that impact the life of a San Diego resident. We break it down so you can understand it and make educated decisions.
Everything that goes into our investigative reporting, the journalists, public records requests, the data crunching, and this very show depends on the support of people like you because we're a nonprofit news organization. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to our friends listening on News Radio 600 Kogo. I'm Andrew Keatts, and I'm here with my friend, Lisa Halverstadt.
Thanks for having me. And I have to say, what's up, my man?
There you go. It's part of the seat. It
part of it
consumes you. Well, listen, Scott Lewis, he's not here today. He often talks about how his goal, what he's doing, is to turn Voice of San Diego into this sustainable force in the city. And it's an early test of that right now, because what we're doing is this week we are testing the premise that in fact we don't need any employees at Voice of San Diego because everyone is sick. Scott's out, Rye's out, our new editor Jesse Marks is out, Sarah's on maternity leave. It's a ghost ship.
It really is.
I know.
And we're still trucking. We're still putting stories out. We're recording this podcast now.
We are, and we are joined later in the show with Councilwoman Lorie Zapf, and we talk about her. She's running for office again. This would be her third term on the city council, which is a quirk in after city redistricting, because her district changed. She was able to run for 2 terms starting after she had already been here for 1 term. But it is interesting because Lorie, she has won city council twice. She's never had to go to a November election. We are in the first year of this new electoral system in the city where everyone has to go to November. And it's kind of interesting. It's messing with my rhythms for how we cover politics in town, because I'm used to June being a really big deal in city elections because so many city council races were always determined in June. But now it's actually not that crucial because everyone goes to November. So the June races, they're still important, but they're not going to choose who our next city council member is. They'll really, what they'll do for instance, in District 2, Lorie Zapf's seat, is probably it'll determine who gets to run against Lorie. And likewise in District 6 and these other races where you've got multiple people running in one party, it'll just kind of sort them out.
Yeah, more like that traditional primary that most people who just follow national news see and assume happens out, everywhere. But in San Diego, June had always been a big thing.
Right, exactly. So it's weird. It's like right now I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, oh, well, we need to get going. We need to start doing all our campaign reporting. But it's different this year. But we do have some things are taking shape. Some ballot measures are coming together. But again, not until November.
Yeah, and it's prepare, guys. It's going to be another bananas ballot, as our pal Scott talked about for 2016. I expect next week we're going to hear more about housing bond measure.
So this is
set
different.
To go to different than the tourism occupancy tax increase, which we'll have plenty to talk about there. And then, there are many other ballot measures also that we'll be talking about.
I want to. So you wrote a great story this week on some potential opposition that is forming against the hotel tax increase. So I want to get to that. But before we do, tell us a little bit about what we do know about this housing bond measure that we may start hearing a little bit more about next week.
So this is a $900 million bond measure that would fund.
Why $900 million? Why not $1 billion? Why not $800 million?
Well, polling, I guess, led
Really?
the San Diego Housing Federation
That's the
is
sweet
thinking
spot.
about what works in San Diego. You know,
Yeah.
they've spent some money on some polling, and they came to a figure of $900 million. Now, this money specifically would go, would be a property tax increase on homes in San Diego City, and it would fund the creation of new homes, specifically a lot of affordable housing. And they're looking at about 7,500 homes that they believe that they could produce with that $900 million, plus a lot of other resources that they could bring on board having that money.
Yeah. So this is, they are going to bring this in this new revenue source with which they will pay back the bond payment. They will make the bond payments.
You got it.
$900 million, they come in, and they'll use that as leverage to combine with other, like what, state money, federal money for housing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And other investment, private
And
investment.
all in, we think it could contribute $7,500.
Yes. And this would be
Low-income
about
homes.
2,500 of those homes would be for people who are literally homeless, chronically homeless individuals who need housing that comes with supports over the long haul. And then additional homes could be for low-income families, people with disabilities. And the San Diego Housing Federation, which is basically a lobbying group for affordable housing developers, they're the ones that have really been working behind the scenes. Until now, we haven't really heard a ton about this, but have been working behind the scenes to try to get support. Now, this is very different from the hotel tax increase that's being talked about, which is, at this point, they're not really, there's about $2 billion that they're saying that they would estimate would come in with this increase for homelessness. But they're specifically not saying where that money will go.
Yeah.
With this bond measure that we're set to hear more about in the next week or so, they're specifically saying that money will go to homes.
7,500 new homes. So should that sound like a lot, or should that sound like a small amount? 7,500 homes. What is that?
Well, in the scheme of things, we need a lot more than 7,500 homes to solve our housing crisis.
Yeah.
But the folks behind this measure are saying that they think that especially the 2,500 for homeless San Diegans could be a big deal because it comes close or is about, according to the proponents of this, about the number of homes that you need for some of San Diego's most chronically homeless, struggling folks on the street.
Okay.
We'll see, though. Lots to report on that one.
All right. So let's dive into the story you wrote this week. So the convention center measure that we're running full steam ahead towards voting in November right now is similar, but not identical to one that was much like it last summer. One of the big differences since then on the politics side, not necessarily the substance side, but the politics side is that there's labor union support for this one. They were part of the coalition that negotiated behind the scenes to put it together. They have been loudly and proudly supporting it since it was first rolled out. And that, I gather, is because of some changes that are included in this measure that have made certain groups of contractors, basically, construction contractor groups, nervous. Can you tell me what they are concerned with?
Well, let's take a step back real quick,
Okay.
just so we have all of our listeners on the same page with this measure and what's in it.
Yeah.
So this measure is a hotel tax increase of between 1.25% and 3.25% that's assessed on hotel bills.
Mm-hmm.
And they believe that they can bring in about $6.4 billion over about 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that would fund three different things. One, a convention center expansion and other convention center needs. Money for homelessness programs, unspecified exactly what programs we're talking about at this point by design, and also road repairs. Now, last go round, when the mayor was pushing his measure, less money was going to homelessness than in this measure. So labor is very proud of this negotiation, and they've made the biggest show of talking about the additional homelessness money that's coming in through this measure. But, of course, as this language is out, more folks are taking a look at it. And most recently, 2 construction lobbying groups have taken a look at the language in the initiative and have worried that that language, coupled with a state bill that is cited in there, could kind of easily pave the way for a very controversial project labor agreement.
All right. So a project labor agreement, briefly, does not require union labor. That is a common misconception, probably born from the fact that many times when it's described in shorthand, someone will call it just a union contract or something like that. But it does not require union labor. It certainly facilitates union labor work in some ways. But basically, it's a deal. Unions promise that there's going to be enough labor to complete the project and that they'll never strike or stop work in any way related to the project. And then in exchange, that the contractor who's doing the hiring agrees that all the labor will go through union halls and that they'll pay into union benefit programs. Okay. So that is background.
Thanks for that, Andy.
No
Thank
problem.
you for that.
Yeah. So what is the specific beef that these contractor groups have? What this is radio. We're gonna have to keep it light enough. But what is it that they're seizing upon?
So this new initiative language cites a bill that Assemblyman Todd Gloria, who has been a longtime supporter of a convention center expansion, is the former mayor, if you guys all remember that time.
That's right.
He helped to amend a law at the state level, or to push a law at the state level, that would allow the city to pursue a specific type of contracting. It's called construction manager at risk. And what that means is essentially that the city can have a contractor who kind of handles all the other contracts, and they can hold that contractor to a particular sticker price for a project. And so the city believes they could save money with this. Now,
yeah, so basically contractor at risk means just what it says, that
exactly.
If there's a cost overrun, that the risk of that happening falls on the contractor, not the city.
And so this state law clarified essentially that the city could use this for projects, that are at least $25 million. And the city believes it could save a lot of money because, potentially believes it could save at least $25 million on the project. But here are the details. Get ready, wonks. So that measure that Assemblyman Todd Gloria pushed includes some language that is pretty divisive among these construction groups. It essentially says or references what's called a skilled and trained workforce. So it says essentially, if you commit to using this type of contracting, you need to have a skilled and trained workforce, or the city or the construction manager could enter into one of these controversial project labor agreements. Now, the reason that these construction groups are looking, at this pretty skeptically and are even saying that they might oppose the measure is because they believe that skilled and trained workforce language really is a lot more favorable to unions. And in fact, this language has been included in a lot of bills at the state level in recent history.
This was included at in AB 805, the
exactly, yes.
reform measure for Sandag, and was similarly viewed skeptically by these same types of groups as more or less guaranteeing union contracts in the future, project labor agreements in the future through Sandag projects.
And the reason for this is because this skilled and trained workforce language, if you take a look at the definition, it basically means that workers have graduated from a training or apprenticeship program that is approved by the state. And unions tend to have more workers that have gone through those types of programs. And so these two groups, specifically the Associated General Contractors and a group led by Eric Christian called the Coalition for Fair Employment in Construction, are looking at this and saying that they worry that this is an end run to try to get to a PLA, and also are concerned that it could run afoul of a ballot measure from back in 2012, Proposition A, banning the government-mandated
Right,
ballots.
and so this is exactly the reason it would be that there'd be a need for an end run, is because Prop A, which was passed in 2012, June of 2012, it was on the same ballot with Prop B, the pension reform initiative in San Diego. What Prop A said was that you can't mandate, the city cannot mandate a project labor agreement for any sort of city project. And so the idea would be that the long and the short of it is this is a way to guarantee a project labor agreement without guaranteeing a project labor agreement in so many words, which is interesting because one of the things that's had, reportedly kept labor out, on the sidelines this summer over the mayor's convention center initiative was that included no such assurances that they would be able to get the work for it. And so essentially what we're hearing here is that Christian, AGC, that they've looked at the combination of these two, the initiative language and state legislative language, and they say this is a new way to guarantee a project labor agreement without admitting that you're guaranteeing a project labor agreement.
And to be clear, the mayor and Assemblyman Gloria and the coalition behind the initiative, they're all saying this is absolutely not a requirement for a PLA, that that the city or contractors could hire union and non-union folks. Everybody's eligible to bid for this project, and that basically these folks shouldn't be too concerned. And then you've also got the building trades, who I spoke with about this, to talk about their involvement, and they've said, well, of course we want a PLA, and we do think that because of the skills that our workers have, the training that they've had, that this language is good for us, but we're not behind this. And, in fact, anybody can bid.
Yeah. Okay. And so, one of the ways I think you could think about this is that this coalition and the mayor have touted very loudly the idea that this is unprecedented, that we're seeing this level of compromise and productivity between the hotel interests and labor groups. Now, that in itself is a little bit of an embellishment. In 2010, the city put up a tax measure that was supported by both the business groups in town and labor unions in town. It's not unprecedented for these two forces to come together. But that same year, you had this PLA ban, and that was passed. And look, the chamber and hotel owners, they may be willing to deal with unions. They may be willing to hash out a compromise and see a way that they can both mutually benefit. But what I think we're seeing now is a realization that there are still people in town who are not represented at that table, and they don't agree with these types of deals. And even if you strike an agreement, they could still put together some sort of meaningful opposition. And for anything that includes raising taxes and making a major decision about land use, having any sort of organized and funded opposition is a serious headwind.
Yes, and AGC, in fact, helped bring down a community college district bond out in East County back in 2016. And there were a lot of other, details there. The board had actually approved a PLA, so it was very, out there. But any real opposition could be a real challenge for this group. And for now, they're saying they want to shoot for the 2/3 vote in this case. They could have some opposition emerging here soon. And these folks now, both of these construction groups at this point say that they're kind of weighing their options. They want to learn more. They're debating this. And in fact, Eric Christian told me that his group is meeting today to have a discussion about whether they should oppose this. So stay tuned.
Yeah, so we'll see how that works out. I do want to say quickly that just right as we started recording today, the Mayor Kevin Faulkner announced that he has named 30-year veteran of SDPD and Assistant Chief Dave Neslett. Am I saying that right, do you think?
Neslett, I think.
Neslett. The new chief of police for the city of San Diego. So it's an internal hire. He's brought in somebody who's worked under Shelley Zimmerman, who's worked under Chief Lansdowne, who's now going to lead the department. We talk about that a little bit with Councilmember Zapf, and we're still learning more about him. So I'm going to leave that for now and just say that we'll try to learn as much as we can about Assistant Chief Neslett, appointed chief.
He will have to go through a process.
Yeah.
The city council will have to approve his appointment.
Which we should be clear, it would be a major surprise.
It would be a major surprise if they did not.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because, this is the second time that, under Mayor Faulkner's watch that he's appointed somebody internally. And initially the assistant chief is saying he wants to focus on some of the same issues that were really, primary for current chief Shelley Zimmerman. So it'll be interesting to hear, in coming weeks and days, what else the chief might be working on and how he views some of the issues related to recruitment and retention, homelessness enforcement, gang enforcement, any number of things that are hot buttons in San Diego.
Yeah. So we will do some of our homework, learn more about him, and we'll talk about that in a later show. But for now, let's go to our hero of the week. Earlier this week, former Padres general manager Kevin Towers passed away. He was a pretty young guy, only 56 years old. It's been fun to see the outpouring of memories about Kevin Towers and what a nice guy he was and how much people liked him in town. He was the general manager of the Padres for 14 years. He took them to the World Series in 1998, took them to their last playoff appearance in 2006. He was just a good baseball guy, and a lot of people in town clearly have fond memories of him. I think nice to say that he's the type of guy whose reputation has grown since he left the team. People maybe didn't realize quite how good they had it at the time. So rest in peace, and we're thinking about his family. And now the GOAT of the week.
You lose! Good day, sir!
So I wrote a story this week about the city of San Diego's business industry incentive program. This is one specific basic subsidy program that the city of San Diego offers, and was the subject of a not very flattering audit recently. So I looked into some of that, and basically it just seems clear that the Economic Development Department needs to update this program. The Economic Development Department, to its credit, acknowledges that it needs to update this program, that there's been some serious problems. But that's, take a look at my story. Take a look at my story. You'll learn a little bit about some of the questionable businesses that received help despite seemingly not qualifying for it, and an overall lack of information that was provided, all of which was outlined by the city auditor. So that's all the time we have. Stick around for our interview with Councilmember Lorie Zapf, and goodbye to our friends at News Radio 600 Kogo.
Voice of San Diego podcasts are made possible in part by the Prevent Drowning Foundation of San Diego. I'm Voice of San Diego's Kinsey Moreland, and I'm here with Nicole McNeil. Nicole is a board member of the Prevent Drowning Foundation of San Diego. She's also a supervising recreation specialist for the City of San Diego's Park and Recreation Department. Hi, Kinsey. Hi, thanks for being here. Also joining us in the beautiful Voice of San Diego podcast studio is John Cofield. Hi, John.
Hello.
And Auntie May Cofield.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. So, John, tell us about yourself.
Okay, so as you already know, my name is John. I am 13 years old. I'm in the 8th grade. I attend Gompers Preparatory Academy, and some of the hobbies I like to do are I like to swim, obviously. I like all sports. I like basketball, football. I like to hang out with my friends. I like to read. So yeah.
So tell us your story. How did you learn how to swim?
So I've always loved the water ever since I was a baby. And starting off at about 3 years old, my auntie May started taking me up to the Martin Luther King recreation pool. And she signed me up for the swimming lessons there. So every summer I would just go there and do the swimming lessons. So I started off as beginner, and then I just worked my way up to advanced.
So John is definitely one of our success stories. He's, like you said, he started off as a small child learning how to swim, and he's learned, like many other kids who have participated in swimming lessons at the Park and Recreation Department pools, all thanks to the Prevent Drowning Foundation. So the Prevent Drowning Foundation provides funding. They provide funding for parent and toddler swimming workshops. This summer, we had workshops at 7 sites, and they were free. They were open to the public. Parents and children came in. They were introduced to the water. They were provided the safety foundation, if you will. They're learning how to swim in addition at the schools for school programming. And these kids, they're going on to join the swim and water polo teams as well. And they're able to participate in really cool stuff as a result of these programs.
The rest of the sponsored interview with the Prevent Drowning Foundation of San Diego will air at the end of this week's episode.
Okay, and we are joined now in the great Voice of San Diego podcast studio with District 2 Councilwoman Lorie Zapf. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
Thank
you are running for re-election again, and due to a quirk of redistricting,
Right.
this would be for your third term, though not quite in the same district. The other
Right.
one was overlapping, but not exactly the same. So you're an old hand at this. How's it going?
It's going really well. It's really interesting to have been here for so long and be the person who has that experience and institutional knowledge and, really understands issues going back several years. And, I've become that person just because of, my time here and having been a former journalist and somebody who loved to kind of take deep dives into issues. When I was in radio, I used to be like the queen of the 5-part series because I'm like, there's just way too much to talk about. And so,
like our Lisa Halverstadt.
Yeah, exactly. I totally relate to her. And so, like you said, it is not a complete overlap. About 3/4 of the district actually was brand new. Mm-hmm. And I did talk about, I think 3 years ago, whenever I was here, how it was a challenging district, but I think some people mistook that. And I meant challenging. I love a challenge and I'm up for a challenge. But when you look at my previous district, you have Mira Mesa, Penasquitos, Kearny Mesa. It's pretty quiet, right? Mm-hmm. You go to the beach communities with all the tourism and coastal issues and dense communities and a lot of very active community groups. It's hard to get around to everybody and know all the issues, and every one of my 7 communities has a very distinct personality, as you can imagine. Claremont versus OB, for example.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're, saying it's a challenging district is on the money. It's, I mean, pretty much all the big issues facing City Hall these days are pretty white hot in your district, and we'll get through all those. But first, let's start with just getting your take on the news of the day. Just a couple hours ago, Mayor Kevin Faulconer announced the new police chief.
Yes.
Do you know him? What do you think? What can you tell us about him? It's going to be a new person that's going to play a big role in the city.
Yeah. Well, I don't know him close personally. Mm-hmm. I've interacted with him somewhat. I know some of the other assistant chiefs more because, they're more in the district I represent. But he's the head of the directs the homeless outreach team. And I'll tell you, just meeting with him, what a nice guy. Genuinely a caring, good person and a native San Diegan. I was really hoping for a native San Diegan that they would be the one in the end because, as we can see from Chief Zimmerman, she was at everything, everywhere. I don't even know how this woman could do so much in the city of San Diego, but she really genuinely cares about the people in the community. And this new chief, it's the same. Apparently, he scored off the charts with everybody. And his dad was in the police officer, and it's just in his blood. And I don't know. I looking forward to getting to know him more now that he's been selected. But if you take a look real quick at Lansdowne, okay, for example, nice guy and all that, but he came from San Jose. Right. He didn't really have that connection to San Diego, and a lot of, let's just say, stuff happened under the direction of or the leadership of Chief Lansdowne, and we are still, to this day, having to deal with a lot of those issues. Shelley has done a lot to really right the ship and get things cleaned up. But I'll tell you, this new chief is really lucky in a way, because we just passed this really large competitive compensation package, and we are already seeing the results of that. We've had a lot of interest, people coming back, people applying, and actually a lot of people who were going to retire have taken their retirement back. So he's going to, get to oversee and build the police force going forward, and I'm really looking forward to that, because as you guys know, we need a lot more proactive policing, community policing on the streets, and enforcing, giving tickets for the minor things, because you just let go of all of that, and all of a sudden it's kind of chaos out there.
Yeah.
Well, and you've had a lot to say specifically about Prop 47, which former Chief Lansdowne was really a key driver behind. I want to actually read something that you said about Prop 47 at a homelessness forum, and we'll talk a lot about homelessness. Okay. There's much to look back at, but you'd said at the time, it is clear to everyone, even though the statistics are lagging, that since the implementation of Prop 47, it correlates with the increase in these aggressive transients, with these thefts, with the crazy amount of drug use that we're seeing out on the streets, like right out in the open right now. So do you really think that, criminal justice and prison reform is really behind what you're seeing out here? And also, do you think that these folks should be in jail? What about people who never went to jail or were never prosecuted? I want to dig into this, because I've heard you talk at a lot of different forums and events about Prop 47. Here we've got a new chief that's going to be potentially grappling with that.
Yeah, here we go. I stand behind all of that, and I've been asking our chief of police, because this isn't Lorie's opinion. This is the opinion of just about everybody out there. And the question I ask is, have you seen an increase in the amount of transients, homelessness, drug use on the streets, particularly in the last 2 to 3 years? And everybody, from the people in the police department, fire, citizens, everyone says, "Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. It's been really marked increase in the last 2 to 3 years." As I've gone on many ride-alongs with police officers, I talk to them all through the day, and these have been officers primarily who are on what is called the quality of life team. They're not responding to calls. They're out there on the streets. They know the people, and I'll tell you, being out there with them, and we are, they're looking through their backpacks, and we're seeing all of, the paraphernalia and drugs and all this stuff coming out. All they can do is write a ticket now, because Prop 47 made the possession of any drugs, possession under $950, just a misdemeanor ticket. Any theft under $950, including of a firearm, just a misdemeanor ticket. And so there's no recourse for the police officer. So I have seen with my own eyes, people just rip the ticket up in front of the officer and just let it fall to the ground, because they don't care. I mean, I don't think, honestly, this is a good or humane way, either for the citizens or for them. When you just, allow people, you go, well, you can't arrest them, and, you can't force them to go for help, and you can't do anything. They're out on the streets, and as one officer said to me, he goes, "I'm really torn, because if I take away, I can confiscate their drug. I can't take them to jail. I can confiscate it, but they're completely addicted. And what are they going to do? They're going to go panhandle, steal, do whatever they can to get more." So he feels like he's not really keeping the community safe, because he knows by taking the drug away, and yet he wants to get them help, but there's no way to do that. We have handcuffed our own police officers. And if you talk, violent crime is down, granted, but petty theft across the state has skyrocketed. And for example, there's a a small Target wanting to come to OB, and one of the regional people came down here from San Francisco, and I just asked her anecdotally, are you experiencing a lot of theft in your stores? She's like, oh my gosh, you can't even believe the amount of theft. She attributed it to Prop 47 because they can't theft if it's under 950. And she says, believe me, they have calculators, they know exactly the amounts. She says moms are coming in with their strollers and their kids, teaching them to steal. There's a lot going on. So they're brazen now. They're right out in the open because you can be in front of the PB library. You can be shooting up and, doing drugs. And really, there's not much that can be done about that. And we should not have our jails to be places. It's not the appropriate place to take people.
Well, and homelessness is not just a criminal justice issue. It's
Right.
definitely, it's a housing issue.
Yeah.
And now here in the past year, and you've had a lot to say about this, our homelessness crisis that we have helped spawn another crisis, our hepatitis A outbreak that we had that was, unfortunately left 20 people dead. So looking back and ahead, what kind of solutions are you pushing? This is a real issue in your district, but also city and county wide.
Absolutely. And what I've been doing, I've been to Sacramento the past 2 years, and I met with the chief of staff for Kamala Harris at the time. And I'm like, I showed him all these photos, and he could not believe that these were photos from the streets of Pacific Beach, where he had touristed before. I'm like, no, this is PB. This is not downtown. And I said, this is what's happening. And the unintended consequences of Prop 47 have caused a lot of this. So what we're trying to do, there's a few fixes, okay? And one of them is that you make the theft cumulative. So once you reach $950 or whatever it is, then you're facing a felony. Because let me tell you, a lot of the people who were released from the prison release, they were released on their last misdemeanor. A police officer pointed out, he goes, that's a AB 109 release, which is a jail release. And he says, I've arrested him 9 times. He just keeps getting out. He goes, why would I arrest him again? And he says, yeah, his last offense was pretty minor, but he is known to have raped an elderly woman in another state, but that wasn't part of the record, so they just looked at the most recent and let him out. Anyway, so we need to really look at what their full record is. We need to, I think, make the theft of a firearm, I don't care if it's $100, you're going to do bad stuff with that firearm. You're not stealing a firearm to do good. And so a theft of a firearm definitely should be exempted from this Prop 47. It should be cumulative. And we should have, I think it's inhumane, frankly, to allow people just to be, well, we can't do anything. We're just going to let them be drug addicted on the streets. Why do you think the last 2 years in a row we have had the more meth overdose deaths than we have had way before? And it is climbing. Is that right? I mean, I just don't think that that's the right humane thing to do.
Well, so some of that stuff is stuff that's going to have to happen at the state level and potentially even with a ballot measure. I think I don't know if you can change Prop 47 without some sort of new ballot measure. Locally, one of the more recent changes we've seen is Mayor Faulkner has kind of stepped up street enforcement. We've seen much more sweeps, for lack of a better word. First, what's your comment on that increased localized enforcement, and what else can the city of San Diego specifically do to address some of these concerns that you have with the unintended consequences of Prop 47?
Well, the San Diego River has always been a really big issue for me. From when I first got elected, I actually represented Mission Valley over there. And I've participated and worked alongside the River Park Foundation for many years. So I have seen the massive amount of trash and the encampments, illegal encampments down there for years. And I just don't think it's fair for a nonprofit to raise money that could be doing good things to have to do what I believe is a city and county and state issue of keeping the river clean. And so when this Hep A crisis started to get more known, and that was kind of like May of last year, I was at a church in PB doing a senior thing, and I found out that they did weekly feedings for homeless people. And so I was like, wow, I wonder if Hep A could be passed over to their congregation, and they had a daycare facility. And then I started thinking, the San Diego River, all these encampments, there's no toilet facilities. So it's becoming one big, long toilet, right? And so I was concerned, and in July, I mean, Lisa, you've covered this whole thing, is when I wrote the county health department and asked a whole lot of questions about Hep A, how it could be transmitted, blah, blah, blah. And they told me that 4 people had been known to have Hep A that frequented the San Diego River, and there was 1 death attributed to the San Diego River. And then when they said, oh, it can live in certain conditions for up to 2 months in certain conditions, I was like, why are they not doing something? Why am I telling them or having to write a letter to find this information out? It was just alarming. And so that's why I came back first day of council. By the way, and I have it here, and you've seen that, it says confidential at the top. I'm like, why on earth is this confidential? So I had to work to get it unclassified and to get the word out. And next thing you know...
Careful with that. That's big news these days.
I know. Oh my gosh, yeah. And so, as you know, you guys know the history of this, but I'm the one who really rang the big bell and started, saying, look, this is serious. This is not just like, oh, there's some illegal encampments. This is now a deadly issue emanating from the San Diego River. So everything unfolded. I asked my colleagues, please join me. Please, let's get to the red tape. Let's work together and clean this up. And things started happening quickly. And I guess I pushed a little aggressively on the head of the Health and Human Services Organization.
I remember that.
Yes. And, some people were like, she was shaking a little bit. I'm like, I don't care. I mean, seriously, I was very upset about this. People are dying. Yeah. And I shouldn't be telling you. You should be telling me. So definitely better collaboration. You were there the day I said, so what is my expectation of you? Aren't you the Health and Human Services head? Yeah. And so the mayor's office, everybody, we all, the washing stations, the toilets, and then the massive river cleanup. And I remember I met in his office and he's like, we're doing it and, we'll find the money, but this has got to be done. So then we were down there with not me, but the hazmat teams and cleaning it all out. Now we have to keep it that way. And there's been the Water Quality Regional Control Board, I think it is, they measured the water quality of the ocean and they have found human feces out in the ocean and it's coming down our streams from San Diego River, Tecolote, all kinds of different, throughout the county. Did I answer that? It was a little long.
Well, we could have a whole show just on that topic. We've even joked here we could even do a documentary about everything that went down with hepatitis A. But I definitely want to talk to you about short-term vacation rentals. That is the other huge issue in your district.
Right.
Has been an issue for a long time. And obviously there was a pretty big fail toward the end of this year. The city council was set to vote on what seemed to be maybe some possible agreements. And, there were even kind of a last minute, seemed like something might happen that you were on board with. Then it all fell apart. Where are we at now and what are you doing?
That's kind of the story of this issue, right? You think you're there and then it all falls apart. And by the way, I was probably sicker that day than I've been the entire last 3 years, but I was hanging in there just because I wanted this resolved so badly. Barbara was sick too, by the way. We're like, oh God, we're sharing tissue. But on that particular issue, it seems to be a stalemate. And we got Barbara and I, before it was Sherry and I, who are the most impacted by far because people come to the beaches, for the parties, and I understand. But what's happening is our neighborhoods are just completely falling like dominoes, and they're turnstiles of tourists living in single-family residential neighborhoods. So Barbara is just as strong, if not stronger, than Sherry had been on this particular issue. What I see really, I don't know how to call it, just kind of disturbing or upsetting, to me, is that we've got other council members who are barely impacted, who are pushing the issue and voting against the two and not compromising with us and voting against us, the two council members who are bearing the lion's share of the problem. And, I've told Mr. Kersey, I'm like, you've got like 40 or 41 whole home rentals in your entire district that are paying TOT. I've got 4,000. And that's not including Barbara's. So why are you not working with us to get a resolution here? So, I've just worked on this. We were 2-7 last year. Now we were 4. We gained 2 votes. But, with that 5th one, we just don't get there. So The mayor's office has said they're going to, try and broker a compromise that works for all of us. I've kind of let, Barbara came in kind of fresh and new to the battle. I'm like, okay, you take the lead.
Well, I mean, where it keeps breaking down is, a pretty seemingly on a fundamental basis. That, like, there's just a difference of opinion on the best way to handle it.
Right.
Even if everyone's a willing participant looking for a compromise, how does it get done? I mean, at a certain point, is it just that there's no 5 votes to agree on anything?
Then maybe it has to go to the voters.
Yeah.
Maybe it just, we've talked about this. At this point, when you're in a stalemate like this, maybe it goes to the voters, because Maura Elliott has a different opinion from Jan Goldsmith. And so basically she says, and it's true, we have a permissive code. If it's not specifically spoken to and permitted, then it's not allowed. And these short-term vacation rentals are not mentioned anywhere in our codes. And so she's like, they're all illegal right now. And so a lot of people have said, well, then why don't you enforce the law? And basically she said, well, she's created a clean slate. And so now we can come along and put in what is permitted. Mm-hmm. But as far as single-family residential neighborhoods, you should not be you can't just open any business in a residential neighborhood, by the way. And so why is this any different? Our small business ordinance says that you can have one customer and one employee and then one customer at a time. Okay, so a short-term rental is a business. So, I guess unless you're a short-term rental, then it's a free-for-all. Mm-hmm. The people in the neighborhoods have property rights. They have lives to live. They're going to school. They're going to work. And I can't begin to tell you the number of people who have told me they have been cursed at, abused, told all kinds of nasty things like, yeah, we're paying a lot of money for this. Leave us alone. We're going to do what we want. You can't do that in a residential neighborhood. That is really, I'm strong on that. And that has to be a part of a negotiated agreement here.
Well, so that's, I mean, you mentioned an interesting point, because people do have property rights, but the other side thinks that it's a matter of property rights too, that they have property rights to lease the home that they own to whoever they'd like.
You can do it long term
or long.
Yeah, you can do long term, because then it's a family. We have a tight housing market, mm-hmm. and they're taking all these rentals for families off the market.
Right. I guess, but my point is, it is a novel definition of property rights to include what your neighbors do. That your property rights denote some sort of control over what's happening in your entire neighborhood. It's certainly something that people say often. You hear it come up in development fights about people saying, "Well, this was not what I understood. This is not the contract I bought into when I bought my home. So I want to have some sort of say about what happens across the street or down the street." So I don't know. Is it really a matter of property rights?
I believe so, and the reason is these are land use issues, and it's a great. I know I've heard the talking point many times, but if you want to take it to, for example, people own commercial industrial properties. They can't do whatever the heck they want with their property. Mm-hmm. You can't just put a daycare in the middle of a industrial zone. And we have all these zones. I mean, it's so complicated. There's R 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, RS this, mm-hmm. RM that, and commercial this, light commercial, heavy commercial. And so this is what land use planning is about. This is about planning your community, and you have different areas where certain activities are allowed. And so if you extend that argument, it's a free-for-all. Anyone can do whatever they want because they own the property, and that's it, without any regard to, planning or who's, next door to you. And so I would tell these people, and, I would probably, if I was doing this, I might, use the same argument. But I would tell these people, when you bought into that, that was the zone. That's what you bought into. You knew the restrictions. And right now, you cannot go and run this studio out of a home in a residential neighborhood. You're not allowed to do that unless you have one employee and one person coming for an interview at a time. So why is if you're running essentially a hotel, why is that exempt?
Okay, well let's.
I don't know. You look skeptical, but
No,
you know.
I don't. No, I don't. I don't look. I don't.
It's like thinking it through.
Well. So I want to extend this to the question of development, because development is, as you say, we have a housing shortage. Housing prices are going through the roof in this town. It's related to short-term vacation rentals, related to homelessness. It's related to climate action plan goals in the city, and one of the pressure points most recently in this town was in Bay Park, in the Claremont Drive station. Now that seems to have basically been sorted out. There's a development proposal going through there, but the city of San Diego is putting forward a proposal to increase relatively considerably increase how much development could happen and how many homes could be built at the Tecolote Drive station, which is part of your district. What do you think about that proposal as it's going forward right now? I mean, it is, to your point, that when people bought a piece of property, it was clearly stipulated what they could and could not do with it. This would be a pretty serious change to what could or could not happen in that area. And some people have pretty strong feelings about how appropriate it is. Just to clarify for listeners, the draft proposal that's being contemplated right now could allow 8 10-story buildings, potentially almost 100 feet tall, to make way for just a lot of homes right at a new trolley station, which, the argument for it is that we're building a $2 billion trolley line from downtown to UTC, and it makes sense to try to allow more people to live there so that they can make better use of it and increase ridership and all that. So what do you think about the proposal to increase density at the Tecolote Drive trolley station?
Well, right now there's no actual proposal. I've seen somebody who's kind of going around kind of pitching some idea for a proposal, but there's nothing at the city. What actually is going on is these what they call specific site plans for the one is for the Marina corridor, but part of it is north of Tecolote, like SeaWorld Drive, because that's the Claremont community plan, and the other part to the south is the Linda Vista community plan. And right now, I was just looking for the letter I wrote. This was back in June, and I'm really clear that I'm with the residents. I don't want any, there's no changes whatsoever going on. The Linda Vista community plan has a little bit higher threshold because there's no view blockage. There's like 45 feet. And I've heard that some people want to go 90, 100, whatever. People come into my office all the time wanting, to do this. I'm like, that you need to work with the community. You need to be in sync with what the community is. Like, for example, right now, they've just reduced Marina to 1 lane, and I live over there. 1 lane going south, and there's already a lot of backup traffic. Already. I'm fighting behind the scenes to get 2 lanes back because can you imagine one person is slow or truck and everything backs up? So I'm with everybody. You put a huge dense development somewhere and you got 1 lane, that's insane. And so any development that comes through, I'm, encouraging them and working with the residents. I've met with community people. I know what their concerns are. And like I said, there's no actual project or anything, but there is the rezoning, just like we talked about, like with the short, zoning, that's with everything. So what'll happen is that footprint will be zoned a particular way. This much height and density is allowed there. Yeah. That will dictate whatever project will be able to come in there.
Yeah. So what do you think is an appropriate level of new density to make way for there?
I have no idea really at this point how much density. I really, I am one of the neighbors there. Really, I live right off of Marina Boulevard, but over in the Bayho area. But I drive back and forth. I avoid the freeway by going down Marina because it's clogged up. But it really needs to go through a very, and it has been, a very specific plan with the community, with input, and any developer or it's not really a developer, really it's the land use planning people right now.
This is the same planning process really that
that became an issue in Bay Park 4 years ago when
Yeah.
you were last running for office. It's there's been some steps along the way, but it really is the same.
That was
planning
actually
process.
a kind of a false issue, frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Why
a
is
false. It was a false issue that was brought up by my opponent, and what it was a study that was done for Caltrans. I think it was MTS or Caltrans, and
Caltrans, I think.
and they were putting, the consultant was just literally a laundry list of all the potential things you might want to do. You could do this. You could increase the height. You could take away lanes. You could do this. But the way it was presented, and honestly, that study, I never even saw it. The first I heard of it was after it had been poorly presented to the community. And by the way, it was that interim period where I didn't represent that area.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
Ed Harris. So they didn't
Right.
tell
That's
me because in their mind, why? And so I was the same way. I was like, what is going on here? What? And so then I found out it was just a laundry list of potential things. Well, some people took it, and I don't blame them, as, oh my God, this is a plan, this is a project, this is coming forward, and we're going to have all of this stuff. And it's hard to walk people back from that after they've come to believe it. And I kept saying, there is nothing. There's no plan. There's no project. There's nothing. It was a consultant saying, here are different options that you can consider when you are redoing the Morena corridor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that was a study that was going to be done to inform what was
The planners.
the planners, the
Yeah.
next step along, which is the part that we're at now.
Correct.
But it was a little bit more than what you're saying. It was.
I never said I wanted any wall along Morena.
Oh no,
That's
no.
Crazy.
But there was, that consultant report was being managed by city planners for the area whatever was in the study was going to be eligible to go into an environmental report for what would ever be formally adopted at the end of a planning process. So it's certainly true that there was no official project proposal ever submitted, but it was definitely something that was being contemplated by the city's planning apparatus.
The elements of that they were given to look at. Now, at the time, Bill Fulton was on board. He was hired by Filner, and Mr. Fulton was a huge advocate of dense planning. And, I fought with him, like, what are you doing? You don't even tell me about this. You just go and tell the community this. This is not the way that you do things. And so I wrote a letter saying, look, I am completely 100% behind the overlay, which is a 30-foot overlay. For listeners, they probably know this, but west of the 5, that's done by a vote of the people. You can't go an inch above 30 foot, period. But just east of the 5, right along Morena, there is an overlay zone that by right you can build something to 35 feet, but you have the option to go like 45 with a discretion and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not like a hard cap.
Right.
But I've said over and again, I'm in favor of that 30-foot height limit. We don't want to block views, block property values, impact property values on that Morena corridor, and it's just increase the traffic over there too.
So, I'm curious, the climate action plan that the city adopted, it includes lots of things. There's a folder of policies that it includes. Some of them have to do with SDG&E, but some of them do have to do with land use planning, and specifically the idea of increasing dramatically over the next 20 years the number of people who ride bikes, take transit, and walk to work. The specific way that plan says they're going to achieve that goal is by building more homes within a quarter mile of transit stations. So is that intention with what you're saying about keeping a lid on how much new development goes next to, for instance, these new trolley stations?
Well, I know the developer who bought that lot at the bottom of Claremont Drive in Morena. I mean, that's gone through...
Jeff Essecow, right?
Yeah, Jeff Essecow, exactly. He's been working really, really closely with the community. And, they can go up, I think it was back when Donna Fry was there, I believe it was allowed to go up to like 54 feet in that footprint for some reason. That might all be like long expired, but there are certain locations. But right now he's only planning for the 30 foot. I think he might be, trying to get a 45 foot over there. If you go to the Morena Vista station at the end, where the retail Starbucks, and it's right at the trolley stop. That's a 45 feet, I believe. That was like 4-story. And so, this is, like I said, this is working with the community. I understand he's now got really good relations with the community, and he needs to sell them on the benefits, on how it would increase their property value, how he would be able to attract like a Trader Joe's that they might want. And so, he needs, that's not for me to do. I'm supporting the community. It's for him to get the buy-in from the community on the benefits if he wants to go up, to 45 foot. But I'm not, right now I know it's about 30 foot, but again, I think he's doing a good job of really communicating with the community.
Well, we'll see what happens next with that. But just even looking back at your time representing this district, you said, obviously the constituents have a lot to say in this particular district, but also there have been a couple instances recently where you've reflected on the state of the city council. So recently, obviously, we talked about the short-term vacation rental fail. Earlier this week, when City Councilman Scott Sherman, a fellow Republican, tried to push a new way to appoint the city council president. That didn't end so well for him. And you made a comment, essentially that, the state of the city council is divisive. Do you feel confident that the city council can come together and pass important policies? And also, why do you still want this job?
I'm a fighter. My husband says it's in my DNA. Going back to my journalism days, I was kind of like the watchdog journalist and confronting. When I lived in Vegas, confronting the mayor of Las Vegas, and people said I was crazy. I'd end up in the sand, buried out in the desert. I live in this community. My children have grown up here in the same house in Bayho, and I ran because I was a community person. I was really active in all kinds of things, from town council and founding the neighborhood watch group and Girl Scouts and soccer and, running a business and all that. So this is my home and my community. And we grew up at the beach. We grew up at Mission Bay. My children learned to bike ride at Mission Bay. This is our home, our forever home. And I want it to be, a good quality of life, not just for everyone else, but I'm one of them. And so that's why I ran in the first place. It wasn't, too bad at first. I think it's just part of what's going on nationally, and it's become more partisan. Really, unfortunately divisive and partisan. And, at the city council, that's not how I like to work. But I'll tell you, I am working with David Alvarez, for example, and Barbara Bree on the environmental issues, on the short-term rental, on the offshore oil drilling issue. And so, I worked really well with Sherry Leitner and Tony Young. And I'm just, I have Democrats, independents, and Republicans on my staff. I'm not about party politics, and it's about the community. And I am, I'm really, passionate, and you guys know this, about other issues that make this community better. And I see this as an opportunity to have a voice for foster kids. I think people know that dysfunctional family. My mom was just a severe alcoholic and had mental illness issues that my sister inherited. My mom died at 44, homeless. And I know I didn't talk about that until very recently. So painful. To talk about it, I just get chills just sitting here even saying it. But, she was found on the side of a freeway in LA and taken to a hospital and died. And I've written about that. But I really just, want to help these families and kids. I know what it's like to live in poverty. I know what it's like. We used to buy Christmas gifts at the thrift store. We had nothing, really, and lived in fear and anxiety. And I see these kids out there, and I want to be a voice for the foster youth in particular, because if we look at all the spokes that go to the center, About 60-70% of prisoners in jail have been in foster care. About a third of kids who are lured into sex trafficking are former or current foster youth. Half of them drop out of high school. Only 3% graduate college. 50% will end up homeless within 2 years. Third of them across the country end up on social services. Why, when we see this, direct connection, literacy, early childhood literacy, if you don't read by the end of third, fourth grade, you're on a track to go to jail. And foster kids are, like my brother and sister, were just battered around, foster home to foster home to foster home. They had no stability. They had nobody caring about them. These kids are afraid. They have nobody. They have nothing. And they get, like I had, aged out of foster care, and bam, you're on your own. So I just see this as, a wonderful opportunity to help, people's lives get better. And sharing my experience maybe helps, but I don't just do that. I get out and I've, speaking and involved in a lot of these organizations. So I guess that's why. I mean, I'm, getting older, getting on. I've lived a lot of life, and everyone, as you're getting older, you go, well, what good can I do? What, how could I make my life just rich and all that? Now we have a lot of 30-somethings now on the city council, and I remember myself in my 30s. You're just like on a tear for your career, and to get ahead and do all this. And it's Barbara. I like Barbara Bree a lot because the two of us have been businesswomen. We've both been journalists. We both have a lot of very similar issues that we care about. And I really am enjoying working with her on a lot of these issues. David is a true blue believer like I am in environmental issues. I was a big Keep Tahoe Blue advocate. I've been volunteers for Outdoor Colorado. I've always been, that's my first go-to place, not a spa, but a hike. And so I love working with them on these issues, and I really wish, when I say polarized and political, I'm not talking about them, anyway, so I know. Was the question, why do you want to run? Because I kind of went off.
But I also,
okay.
I
Covered
also
a lot
like,
of ground.
she did cover a lot of ground. And I will put in a quick plug for the Union Tribune op-ed that you wrote talking about your mom and your sister. But I do want to ask, though, are there specific policies that if you're reelected, you'd want to be working on? I mean, you talked about the environment. We've talked about homelessness. Are there specific things that you would want to push?
Yes. Particularly with the homeless, we all have our own experiences, but there's a move toward just housing first. And the way I understand it, because I've had meetings all last summer with everybody, and the housing first model that I've been told from the head of the task force is that you put somebody behind closed doors and there's no help. There's no permanent supportive housing means we permanently support them, not that we are getting them supportive services. And one of the most egregious things I heard come out of somebody's mouth who's ahead of this was that, and I said, but you're not helping people. You're getting them a roof, but how are you helping them? A mentally ill person like my mother is not going to seek help. She's gotten this way because of the decision she's made.
One point on that. So permanent supportive housing, just so everybody's on the same page in this conversation, is a permanent home, and it is actually supposed to come with supports. The thing is that the person can't necessarily be mandated,
right,
but a lot of the people who do move into these facilities end up taking advantage of those services.
And those are the people we absolutely need to prioritize and help, people who want help. But there's also there's a lot of different ways to go about. There's that, but we are lacking in this county, and I want to work with the county officials, and I've been trying. We don't have a county mental health facility. A lot of these people need mental health. My sister was one of them. She thought everybody else was crazy, not her. She would not take her meds, and she was just like making horrible decisions that killed her at the end of her life. So we need mental health. Alpha Project is great. They're wonderful. They have on-site support services. Just about everyone there has mental health issues. More Alpha-type projects, Alpha Square. We have solutions for change. These are for families with kids. They're reuniting them. They're helping them right there on site, helping them. And these are the people who want to get off of abuse. Like this one mom told me, she says, I just wanted my kids back. I needed help. And when I went to just a housing first, I ended up back doing stuff because I was surrounded by these people and I lost my kids again. When I ended up in Solutions for Change, they're really supportive and they're other families and they've got a support system. What I want to talk about is a whole holistic, not just one model, but many models. And I'll tell you, the county has got to be a part of this. The city can't shoulder everything. And we need more facilities and we need to help people get better. And my biggest, I said, the 2018 for me is a year of prevention. And I want to have in there, and I keep talking about it, where is the prevention? We want a long-term solution. We need to prevent people from becoming homeless. We need to intercede earlier and get them treatment so they don't become somebody out on the street. Like I've said about foster kids, I said, what? Do we have to wait until they're drug addicted and homeless before we help them? Makes no sense. So prevention, and getting people before it's too late.
We are very close to running out of time here, but I do want to ask you one more thing that we're keenly watching right now. Somebody, a mysterious someone, is out there polling about the future of the sports arena, which is in your district. First of all, do you know anything about who's behind this?
No, and I am trying to find out really bad.
Okay.
I want to know too.
All right. Well, so, but we can deduce from some of the questions they're asking what they generally have in mind. Basically, there's a community plan going through the city's planning process right now, which would increase the allowable density in some of the areas around there. Meanwhile, a bunch of leases in the sports arena area that the city holds are reaching their expiration in 2020, around 2020. And it seems that there's somebody out there who has the idea of maybe combining those two things, the fact that these leases would be open and that the land would have been upzoned to potentially build a lot of housing over there, potentially a new arena as well. Are you supportive of that concept?
Well, I've heard a lot of people talking now because of our housing shortage, like where would more dense, higher level housing go? Affordable mid-range, mid-family, working family housing. And a lot of people have mentioned Midway, so perhaps it's somebody who's looking at that, but it is covered under that 30-foot height limit.
Sure is.
Right now. And so I don't know, I don't think people 30 years ago were thinking about, that whole coastal area and the need for, just 30 years ago, the population has really exploded. And because of the tight housing supply, all the rents and selling prices go up. And we have been woefully short on building moderate income type housing. It's either the high end or the low end. And if you're at a lower end, you can't just jump into the high end. You need some middle step to go. And that's where we are woefully short on housing, building that. And so I've just heard that, a lot of people think that would be a good opportunity. It would have to go to a vote of the whole city, and somebody would have to come up with, I think, a really good plan, but it would 100% have to incorporate better traffic. Like, right now it's incredible. You go on the 5 going south, and you either get off at Rosecrans and you're backed up over the bridge, or you have to get off at SeaWorld Drive, go all the way down Sunset Cliffs, Nimitz, and around. So, and then same thing if you get on the 8 going east, you can't just get on the 5 north. It's impossible. You can't do it. You have to get off, get back on. So there are some really major traffic realignment issues that need to happen there because, Point Loma, you have to go through Midway to get to Point Loma and a lot of times to OB. So you can't create gridlock there. And you would need an entire cohesive plan, not just, we just want to see if you want to build another arena with something around that. To me, that's no plan.
So that would have to be part of it. Whatever the proposal is would have to, in some way, deal with a lot of the traffic and freeway issues right there?
100%. I mean, that is one of the worst. Do you guys ever go there?
Well, we used to have our office over there.
Oh, in Liberty Station, of course.
You
Yes.
get stuck at every light.
So now we have the smart lights going down Rosecrans. It's actually reduced the travel time by 25%, stopping 50%. That's great, but still, if you add massive housing, you need to really look at Sports Arena Boulevard, Midway, all of that, and have, I think, one big master plan, and then maybe that go to the people. But like I said, I'm trying to find out, and he won't tell me. Dean Stack won't tell me. Who's your client? I want to know what's going on here.
Yeah.
Well, we'll keep watching for sure.
Oh yeah, me too. So I'll let you know. You let me know.
All right. Okay, well, that's all the time we've got, but thank you very much for coming in, Councilmember
you.
Lorie Zapf.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And now back to our sponsored interview with the Prevent Drowning Foundation of San Diego. So, John, now that you know how to swim, tell us about you participated in a pretty cool program this summer. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, the junior lifeguard program. Yes.
Tell us about it.
So it was a lot of fun. I mean, I learned a lot. I learned a lot of different things. Like I learned to surf. I learned to boogie board, paddle board, kayak, canoe. So I learned a lot of new things. I had a lot of fun. I met a lot of new friends. So it was a lot of fun.
So, Nicole, tell us a little bit more about that program, too. How are kids selected? How do they become a part of that? How do they get that experience?
Eventually, we want every kid to be able to participate in that junior lifeguard program at the beach. But the thing is, you have to be safe in the water. You have to be a pretty good swimmer in order to participate. So you do have to pass a competency level test. You have to pass a competency level test where you swim across the pool and back. And John was able to do that as a result of all of the swimming lessons that he participated in growing up at the Martin Luther King Jr. Pool. All of these lessons were funded by the Prevent Drowning Foundation of San Diego, so we're very excited.
So that program is specifically a program of Prevent Drowning San Diego, or it's a partnership with the city?
It is a partnership with the city of San Diego. That's correct. So the foundation, the Prevent Drowning Foundation, funds programming that we host at the City of San Diego pools.
Got it. Okay. So, Aunt May, let's get you in here. What advice would you give a kid that doesn't know how to swim? Where would you send them?
Absolutely to the community, their community park and rec. Any park and rec that has a pool, the programs are amazing. For us, we were there, like John said, every summer. And he started off as a beginner. He worked his way up to intermediate, and then he worked his way up to advanced. But we just took advantage of it every single summer, and he just began to be a stronger swimmer. He made lots of friends and good relationship with his coaches, and it led to him being on the swim team and the water polo team. And it led to him being selected for a scholarship for the junior lifeguard program, which was just incredibly amazing.
So, John, it sounds like swimming is playing a big role in your life right now. Do you see it being a part of your life forever? What's the future of swimming for you?
Yes, I see swimming as a huge part of my future. I'm working towards being a lifeguard as my first job as soon as I get old enough. And then hopefully I will be able to join the high school water polo team and swim team, and then hopefully even make it to the college level.
Very cool. Nicole, parents might be wondering if there's like a sliding scale for some of these programs. You mentioned a scholarship. I know I'm a parent of 2 young kids, and we go broke every summer getting our kids into these, what can be, if you're doing like private swim lessons, very expensive. So what resources are there for parents on a budget?
Yes, so it can definitely be a challenge. What the foundation, the Prevent Drowning Foundation of San Diego, what we're working on is providing swimming lessons in all of our City of San Diego schools. So we want the 4th and 5th graders to come over to the local pools and participate in swimming and learn how to swim at that point. In addition to that, the City of San Diego offers swimming lessons in the afternoons, and we do provide scholarships for those who qualify. The best is just stop by your local pool or get in touch with the foundation, and we can help you out. If you want to learn how to swim, we'll get you there.
May I give a couple shout outs?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I would like to give a shout out to the MLK pool. I would like to give a shout out to my coaches, Jared, Megan, and Hector. I would also like to give a shout out to the new Jackie Robinson YMCA. I can't wait till that pool opens up in 2019. And then I'd like to give a shout out to my Uncle London. He's been a big part of my life. And then also my Auntie May. She's taken me to the pool almost every single day of the summer, every single day of the year. She's taken me to the pool. She's made sure I've been there, and without her, none of this would be happening. And I would like to give a big shout out to her.
Go Auntie May. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
For more information about the Prevent Drowning Foundation of San Diego, visit preventdrowningfoundation.org.